Roll it on. It is the grand finale of the Pat Richter Show right here on 100.5 ESPN, the ESPN app, and Wisconsin On Demand. Alex Strofe and the great Pat Richter, the pride of Eastside Madison, live from the Everlight Solar Studio on the east side of Madison. Excited to be joined now by the founder and CEO of Good Karma Brands, the legendary Craig Karmazin joins us now. And Craig, we were taking a walk down memory lane.
Wait. Just stop.
Stopping?
No legendary. With Pat's here, I'm not called legendary, and I'm never called legendary. So come on.
Fair.
We are in the presence of a legit legend of Pat Richter, and it's incredible because Pat knows this. Our company would not be here if it weren't for Pat.
Bingo.
Legitimately came to visit Madison for a weekend, had a great time, drunk with friends, said, hey, maybe we should start a company. And then as I started to do the research, I picked up this book called From Red Ink to Red Roses. And it was pretty much the story of how Pat transformed the University of Wisconsin athletic program along with Donna and eventually Barry and doing all those things. But without knowing what this community could be from a sports standpoint, our company never would have existed. And so everything we've done over the past 25 years would not be here, Pat, if it weren't for you.
Well, I appreciate it, Craig. I never knew that, but I knew that you were young, aggressive. Back in those days, there was an opportunity to do something for people that had a passion and also had a niche and understood what the heck was going on. And I remember that I always enjoyed having a chance to talk with you because of fresh ideas and things like that. And you guys have done a great job. You certainly have not let anybody down in that respect in terms of the way you've covered the Badgers.
Yeah, well, Pat, it's incredible to think about it because you made that transition from the business world to sports administration. Were you naive to think that you could just run it the way you would run businesses? Because now when you think about it, it's just such a different world, right? The things that you had to deal with in administration compared to in the business world that you were coming from?
Well, I'd be the first one to imagine to say that I was not a business type person, a financial person. I was human resource, business type people, and the relationship that we had with playing for a guy like Lombardi and understanding about professionalism and things like this, and that you had to be on all the time. You couldn't just put on when you wanted to be on because people depend on you for expertise and advice and things like that. And so it's not something you can turn on and off like a water faucet. You had to be on all the time. And so it was, I think, being my respect, it probably was not so much a financial issue. Yes, they were in debt. They were losing money. So the numbers spoke for themselves, but it really was a question of having the right people. And I think that was where my forte came in with respect to picking people, having a chance at Oscar Mayer and General Foods and Kraft, and in terms of identifying people that fit the culture. In other words, not necessarily when I went out to do recruiting, I didn't look for the person saying, I want to find this engineer that got this skill. I found the person that fit the culture and had the qualifications, and then someone else that had the expertise in engineering, for example, or somewhere else that they said, yes, they've got our skills and they fit. And we said we pass on the culture part of it because that was a very important part of the business at Oscar Mayer. It was an organization that, when you met people in the hallway, you understood what they were doing. When I went to General Foods, we did it with lap decks, and everything was in paper, and it was not personalized, and it made a big difference. And so that was it. I didn't even think about the financial part other than the fact that there was a number. Yes, we were losing money, and the rationale as to why was because we were losing football, and that was a question of getting the right person in the right spot in football, and that was a chance we had to dig ourselves out of the hole.
And so whether it's an engineer or a football coach, your premise was, I'm going to get the right person, and sure, they need basic skills, but they can learn a bunch of things. But culturally, I'm going to make sure that I start with that.
Yes. They're the right fit for the organization, the right person for that job, and the right person to be a change agent with respect to what we tried to accomplish, and everything else will take care of itself, and let them take care of the business the way that they have to in order to why they were selected in the first place.
Well, this is supposed to be your last show, so we're supposed to be talking about all these things, but I always feel like I can learn so much from you. So when we have these opportunities, I want to ask these questions because I think so many people are in these positions where they want to be disruptive, but then you bring in a disruptor and, oh my gosh, there was this person who we kind of liked and they're kind of rubbing them the wrong way. Like, what was it like bringing then in someone like a Barry Alvarez as a disruptor? Because you had your vision, but then you bring someone like that, you need to give him some space also. How do you balance getting aligned and then allowing him to build the culture that he wanted to build, which you then had to do for each coach at each specific program?
Yeah, there's no question, Craig, that when he came in, it was a shock treatment. I don't think that I have the personality necessarily for the shock treatment type of thing because we needed people that kind of we weren't going to make a lot of changes in the way that we did things and the people that do those things. But in football, where we have to really move the nut forward, so to speak, being a change agent, do the things that Barry had to do, and get the right kind of people. We're seeing that right now with Luke Fickell and making change to get the right people on board. And you only have so much time to do that. You don't say, well, wait for the fifth year or sixth year to make the changes necessary. You have to jump on it right away because people, especially back in those days, were really hungry for success and wanted it to happen not necessarily as quick as it did happen, but they were patient, but they wanted to see progress. And I look back on our first marketing effort, so to speak, and they used to do a senior poster. And the first one, I think it said, a whole new animal. And I never forget that after the first couple of games, we were kind of on the fringe of just doing things that we weren't necessarily equipped to do. And then it kind of slipped away from us. And I remember getting a couple of letters from people saying, well, looks like the same old animal to me. And so, but you could see that there were things that were happening that were changes. There were people that, the physicality of it all, the people were different. And it just was going to take some time. And hopefully, with that second year, the tickets went down a little bit and then they came back and stayed up. And so people had that feeling that the right people were in place and that things could happen and be successful, and they wanted to be part of that. And that's what we're seeing today a little bit, is that it's odd because there's been a whole generation of people and supporters and youngsters and people like that haven't seen too much negativity and so much defeat, and they've been used to the success and the athletics and the winning and things like that. And it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, everybody with the nil and with all the things happening, it's going to be a tougher road to hoe, so to speak. And so patience is not a good virtue with respect to a lot of people that are looking at it today, and they're anxious. And that's something I don't think we're anticipated, but I think you can understand it, that it's a whole different generation that's been grown up with success. And it's not an easy business to do that in anymore.
And I certainly fall into that group, Pat, right? I mean, I've grown up with relevancy for the University of Wisconsin Athletic Department. The decent Craig Karmazin with us here on the Pat Richter Show finale. Thank you. I tried. With the legendary Pat Richter and Alex Strope from the Everlight Solar Studio. So I'm curious, Pat and Craig, we were talking a little bit off the air, but Craig mentions in the late 90s when him and his drunk friends come to Madison and have this vision to start this company. What was the first interaction you had with Craig? Do you remember that? Because your memory is supreme. So I'm curious if you remember your first interaction with a young, wide-eyed Craig Karmazin.
Well, I think it was just that. First of all, he had a background, he had an understanding of the business. It was kind of a fragile time because we had a big flagship station. And so we had talked on occasion like that. And I remember maybe the one more serious one was when I'm not sure where I was or what I was doing. I think I was maybe out of it at the time when I felt that they had, kind of earned their chops, so to speak, and they didn't get the bid. And I remember talking to Craig, and I was disappointed because you hear the guys that did it the right way, that were enthusiastic, energetic, had all the right sort of things, but just couldn't quite crack that big, long, standing kind of mental block, so to speak. And I thought, well, hopefully that will be the first time. There's just an opportunity to come in and do things better in the future, and prove to everybody that they belong in that space, and they did that, and so he learned well from the family's standpoint, but he brought along the enthusiasm and the energy and things that we had kind of taken for granted and not really had the right focus, so to speak, because people had taken them for granted, the people that were in the position, and kind of afraid to take an opportunity to get somebody that's got new thinking and energy and has their priorities in the right place.
Well, Alex, you mentioned that the idea of you've grown up this whole time, because I think it's so interesting, because Pat said, ticket sales went down that second year, but ticket sales are still up 30 plus years later.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is incredible. And when you are trying to build something, it's that idea of kind of not compromising at the beginning. But Pat was so good to us because the department did have an official relationship, as it still does, with another broadcast company, but was always so generous with his time and information and being willing to talk and mentor us and help us along the way and support events that we were doing that he knew were about the community and about the program. And he knew that, we cared about the program because we were committing our lives to moving to this market and to wanting to see success here. And it's why it's so incredible to see the sustained, success. I mean, I was at, that game when, Barry's retirement game when the loss to Michigan, and it was like the fans had never been in a game that you'd lost before. It was the expectations now are so high, which is why I want to ask you, Pat, about Mac. Chris McIntosh in this role now. What an amazingly bold decision maker he's been, because he has that link to the program and the past, but also feels that commitment to continue to raise the bar for the future. What's it been like seeing a former student athlete like yourself, grow into that role that Mac is now in?
Well, I think certainly the chips are all in the middle of the table right now, because it's a little different situation, and I think that just as I mentioned earlier, with the people's expectations and the fact that they're used to winning and being successful, and it's more or less winning plus. It's not just an average of 9 games, perhaps like Nebraska was thinking. Whatever, it's a continued success, and the fact that people can. You don't have too many surprises along the way. The fact is that you're consistent, and understanding that the people that are stewarding the program understand what the expectations are and are willing to put their reputations on the line and careers on the line, for that matter, to make it better. And so that's the thing that's really different. And I think that people they have to get comfortable with that, get understanding with that. Because it's still. And I think we moved away a little bit. It used to be when I made the changes with after Stu Jackson of basketball, and we went with Dick Bennett and then Bo Ryan and even Mike Eves in that respect. A lot of former student athletes or people that had connections to Wisconsin that had success because they had people that would follow them, and they knew that they would have the support of the people if they were successful. And we've gotten away from that a little bit, which is probably the right thing to do, because you can't just work yourself into a frenzy trying to find that type of person. You have to find the right person for the job at the time. regardless of what their background and experience is. And we just went through that with hockey, and now the change is taking place. And so sometimes those are tough bullets to chew on, and but yet they have to happen because, as it was mentioned earlier, you represent all the shareholders and stockholders and ticket holders, so to speak, and you want to make sure that you're giving them every shot that you have to be successful, because it's very expensive. I mean, this is not a $5 ticket when I played. It's much more expensive than that, and people have choices. And every time you make a change, you have to make sure that you provide something new to them, and understanding and the fact that they have faith in you to be successful, and willing to invest that money in that way, in that type of entertainment, because it's certainly they have a chance of putting their money in a lot of different places nowadays, and you want to make sure that you're relevant, and that's what you have to do.
So, Pat, what would you have told me if I had said you were going to end up as one of the longest tenured sports radio hosts in the state of Wisconsin? Because, right? I mean, Alex, you know, who's around? I mean, how many people have had a consistent weekly sports talk show in Madison, longer than Pat? There's certainly not many.
Not many, if any.
Right.
Well, I tell you, it's been a real pleasure, because I do, when I get out, whether you're shopping or something like that, and more people, that just the average person just to say, I enjoy the show, I tune in when is it going to be on a Saturday? Sometimes I've forgotten myself when it was going to be on. But,
Yeah. Well,
but
Pat,
they enjoyed it.
You mentioned, we were talking off the air a little bit. You got a phone call from Craig probably some 15 years ago, and you were thinking that was going to be it.
Yeah, I really did. I thought that just for how we were relevant, it was just a short spot during the week, and how could that transfer into anything else other than I had no intention to be any kind of a talk show person or whatever. And Craig said, well, we love the stories. The guys are going to do it. We like do it in an hour. And then I settled down a little bit when the guys told me, whether it was Bill or whoever it was, talked to me saying, well, out of that whole hour, you got 44 minutes of content or whatever it is. So you should be able to manage that. And it was enjoyable because, that people enjoyed it, and they would come up and say that. And I think that in that sense, you have a tendency to be a little careful. I think one of the times I remember is when we were talking about the Big Ten ACC Challenge in basketball, and I'm not sure whether it was Bill or Jim who was a host, and the I don't know where we were on the air. The word came out that we were going to play North Carolina in the ACC Challenge, and it was supposed to be kind of like you pair off ones versus ones, two versus two. You go visit one year, come back home the next. And I kind of blew off a little bit of steam, and I said that didn't really seem to be the way it was supposed to be. And one specific school had their way, and da-da-da-da. And the next thing I know, one of the guys from the studio, after the show was over, he called me at home and said, "Say, do you mind if we use a couple of clips on the kind of promo ad?" And I'm thinking, "Oh, brother, you dummy, what did you do now?" And I realized I got a little bit too far ahead of myself. And then I heard from Bo, and somebody said Bo had gotten all kinds of calls. He said, "You should have heard what Richter just said." So you have things like that, and but it does make you pay attention to what you're saying and how you're saying it, and that people are listening and they feel it's important. So it's got to be make sure it's measured, and not that you're trying to position it or mold it, but just be honest with the people. And if it's an opinion, it's an opinion.
Yeah, it is incredible, though, to think about, that this year, 30 years since the Rose Bowl, right? Since that 93 season. I mean, is that math even possible?
Yeah.
To think about, and to think about, men's basketball, football, the creation of a women's hockey program, right? During that time, the sustained excellence, all the winning men's hockey, and all that has been done. And the amazing thing for us has been to hear your point of view on all of it over the years, because whether it's Lombardi, as you mentioned, or anyone from then to now, you seem to have a connection. And to bring that to all of our fans who listen to you each week, and to us off the air, to be able to learn from you has just been absolutely incredible, and to call you a teammate for all this time and have you out at the Wisconsin Sports Awards and so many of the different events we've done together has just been so special for me and for us.
Well, I tell you, I appreciate it. I enjoyed very much sitting next to your dad at one of the sports awards. I of course, heard him being out east, and when I was out there with Don Imus and things like this, and I was talking, to pick his brain, I felt like I just want to use this opportunity to talk to Mel and enjoy it. But I appreciate the opportunity to be here, Craig, and it was you've done a magnificent job, and it would be my pleasure to do it all over again. So, we talk about 30 years, the last Rose Bowl. I just think of it, the 63 Rose Bowl was 60 years. That gets a little sobering.
Wow. That's wild. That's wild. What an amazing career.
I think I don't know. I'm looking on video. I think Pat, wouldn't go alligator arms. I think he'd make the catch over the middle and take the hit still. Pat, you think you can handle
doubt.
it?
Oh, yeah. I can do that. The body tells me otherwise, but broken collarbones and fingers, and I could go down the list of all the things that happened, but you wouldn't.
Wait, do you ever have any dreams where in your dream you're still playing football and you wake up and you're like, oh wait, that's not me anymore?
Well, it was if I just feel my nose and the collarbones and things like this, and what's the next up in the surgery department, you do it. But like Elmo Guire said, he said, if you knew you're going to live this long, you'd taken better care of your body.
Well, yeah, but you wouldn't have had as good a time if you'd been too worried about taking care of it.
Very true. Pat, we could do this for another 15 hours as far as I'm aware. But, Craig, we appreciate you taking the time. And, Pat, you are an absolute legend. We will wrap up the finale edition of the Pat Richter Show right after this on 100.5 ESPN, the ESPN app, and Wisconsin On Demand.